Hi, my name's Cody. I own and operate an appraisal company based in Denver, Colorado. I've put this video together to help people better understand basic appraisal concepts before they order an appraisal to ensure that what they are paying for will meet their needs. The first key concept to understand about commercial and residential real estate appraisals is that all appraisals are made for specific situations and for specific people or entities. This is legally required by USPAP. USPAP is an acronym for the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice and sets the governing standards for real estate and personal property appraisals in the United States. USPAP mandates that all appraisals identify and disclose who will be relying on the results of the appraisal, for what reason, and who is paying for the report. After presenting these three basic concepts, I'll provide some examples of how they are used daily within the appraisal industry. Let's start with intended user. The entity that will be relying on the results of the appraisal is called the intended user. If there are multiple persons or entities, they are called the intended users. A person or entity not named as an intended user is not permitted to rely on the results of the appraisal. The appraisal also must identify the specific use in which the result of the appraisal will be used for. This use is called the intended use. Or if there are more than one uses of the appraisal, the intended uses. The appraisal cannot be used for any other use that is not specifically named as an intended use within the appraisal. Finally, the appraisal must identify the person or entity who is engaging the appraiser for the appraisal. This is called the client. In many situations, the client is the entity paying for the appraisal and is also the intended user. It is important to remember that it is the client's responsibility to inform the appraiser of all intended uses and intended users when ordering the appraisal. For many situations, if the client ends up adding another use or user of the appraisal after it has been started, it can change the scope of work, type of report, and increase cost and turnaround time. For this example, we assume that a seller wants to get an appraisal to list their building for sale. They want to know the market value of their property and would like an appraisal to establish a list price. In this example, the seller will be paying for the appraisal and has contacted the appraiser. In this case, the client would be the seller, named as either a company or individual because they will be engaging the appraiser. The intended user would also be the seller, named as either a company or individual because they are the only party relying on the appraisal. The intended use of the appraisal is to list the property for sale because the seller has informed the appraiser that this is what they intend to use the appraisal for, and they have not indicated any other use of the report. This example builds on the first example. Now there's a slight modification to the situation. The seller also needs the appraisal to settle an estate, in which the appraisal may be sent to the IRS. For this example, we will assume that the seller has a CPA that will be filing their tax return and an attorney that will help with the legal matters of the estate. The client name remains unchanged because the seller, and only the seller, will be engaging the appraiser and paying for the appraisal. The intended users would now be the seller, the CPA, the attorney, and the IRS, because these are the parties that will be relying on the results of the appraisal. The intended uses are now to list the property for sale and for estate settlement, which relates to income tax purposes. With an intended use, intended user, and client identified, the appraiser can begin to understand the scope of work required for the appraisal. As part of the scope of work, the type of appraisal report and style of appraisal report will influence how much detail is required within the valuation, which in turn affects the price of the appraisal and how long it will take to complete. Thanks for watching.